backup QB battle. I didn't even say QB battle because it's not. We know the starter is, but from everything coming out of camp, it's a real battle. Like Matthew Caldwell is putting in some real work. Steve Sarkisian has mentioned him. I think Trey Owens is also battling. It really shocked me if KJ Lacey is listed for a backup quarterback at all during this year. How do you think this turns out, Gerald? And then do you think it could change going into the season as well? Like the first couple games, it could be Matthew Caldwell, then later on Trey Owens, because that's kind of where I'm leaning, but I wanted to get your opinion.
Yeah, so I've got I don't have sources, but I've got somebody who's been at the media sessions of practice, and they've seen reporting on Trey Owens struggling in some spots and missing some throws that he normally makes and things like that. So I wouldn't be shocked to see if the depth chart was, Arch and then Caldwell and Trey Owens. KJ Lacey apparently has a pretty good command of the offense and is playing pretty well. So I think that third spot we may see, depending on if Owens can get things together. I like Trey Owens. I think he's a baller. He came out and was a baller in the high school playoffs. So I am not going to count him out because he's a guy who just doesn't quit. But ultimately, I think from what I'm hearing and from what again, folks I trust have seen, that I think, Owens will probably line up at that QB3 to start the year with Caldwell in that second spot, and KJ Lacey probably bringing up the rear. And that's no statement on KJ Lacey. That's just how Arch was the third or fourth guy on the depth chart his freshman year, or his true freshman year. So the opportunity for KJ Lacey is still there. And I think KJ Lacey is going to be a baller. Whole other conversation. But ultimately, back to your question, I think Caldwell, Owens, 2 and 3.
No, I agree. So I think early on what's going to happen is Matthew Caldwell, because of the experience, will be QB2. And if we need him to come into an actual real game situation, like hypothetically, I don't even want to put this out in the ether, but I'm going to. If Arch Manning were to get hurt versus Ohio State, I think you would see Matthew Caldwell because of the experience aspect of it. Would it still be the biggest game he's ever played in? By far. He's played at Troy, so this would still be a gigantic game. But you don't want to throw Trey Owens to a situation like that for his first start, but I do expect, like, when we play those 3 cupcake games after Ohio State, I think Trey Owens personally should be the next guy up, because that should be the development for him. You put him in these situations that, we're up 28 plus points and they don't really matter if he makes a mistake. He can go through, get some scrapes, get some bruises, get some learning experience, and actually have real game experience then that he can, lean back on. Whereas I think you kind of be wasting that if you put Matthew Caldwell in that situation. He's been in it, 1. And 2, this is his only year in the program. So I understand if real game scenario, Florida, Oklahoma, Arch Manning can't go, you have to go with Matthew Caldwell. But I think in those cupcake games in between opening SEC play in Ohio State, I think Trey Owens personally should be getting most of those snaps.
Yeah, and again, I think I'm not counting Trey Owens out of the conversation. I think he's a guy who, when the lights are bright, he steps up. I mean, he is the guy who said, "Oh, you've got the top-rated quarterback of all time coming in. Cool, I'm totally fine with coming in and trying to push him as his backup." Right? That's the kind of attitude that Trey Owens has. And so, again, it's early in camp, and I wouldn't be shocked if he got his act together and got his head on straight, because I really like him. There's a reason why Iowa State was going all in on him, because he's a guy who they thought could lead their program into the next era of Matt Campbell football. So ultimately, I think, as it starts, I think you're right. In that Ohio State game, even if he hasn't played at that level, there's something to be said about a quarterback that's had more reps in the trenches going into that type of situation at Ohio State, right? I think getting Trey Owens the opportunity, because I think Trey Owens will likely be QB2 next year as well, in a year where I think Texas probably is more pushing the chips into the center. I think that next year is probably more likely the championship year. So having a guy like Trey Owens who has real game experience, who has those snaps, having him lead the team out of the locker room in the second half, those types of things, that's ultimately going to be great for Texas next year when they're in position, I think, to push again for a national championship.
No, 100%. It'll be interesting in that situation as well. Do they not even let Matthew Caldwell take snaps in those type of games, and they just like, hey, KJ Lacey, you're going in here because you need the experience? Well, I'm interested to see how they handle this situation, because again, like, experience with these guys matters. And let's be honest here, this is with every position group on the team. With those 3 cupcake cupcake games after Ohio State. You have a lot of young guys that, you could push out there to get some real reps before we get into SEC play, because do I think this team is super talented? Yeah. And I think 1 through 85, this is probably the most talented team we've had at Texas in a very long time, if not ever. But it's super inexperienced at certain positions, and I'd like to get them a lot of reps just in case before we head into SEC play, and quarterback is the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a quarterback league. It's a quarterback's game, and Texas has had it's been in an enviable position for several years where they've had Arch Manning as your backup, or you've had Malik Murphy as your backup. You've had a guy who has been and could be a starter at other spots, playing as your backup quarterback. So Texas doesn't have that this year. Also, Quinn Ewers, they don't have Quinn Ewers' injury history to contend with. So that's six in one, half dozen in the other. But ultimately, I think you're right. You're getting Trey Owens to a point where he's ready and comfortable for next season as QB2. And again, it's early in camp. We're week 2 of camp. Things could shake out, knocking the rust off. There's a lot left to be said.
No, but also props to Matthew Caldwell for coming in and, not, sitting back and saying, hey, I'm getting paid probably a decent amount of money. I'll take this easy. Don't really care. Left Troy. I know I'm not going to play that much. Like, he's pushing these guys, and he's brought in to do that, and he's running the offense well. I mean, Steve Sarkisian is hard on his quarterbacks, guys, and he shouted out Matthew Caldwell multiple times so far. So he's obviously doing a really good job. I'm interested to see, like when he does play, what he looks like, see what he does in the offense, because, I mean, he'll play with way more talented players here at Texas than he ever would have at Troy. So that wraps it up for the Texas backup QB battle. I do agree. I think it will be Matthew Caldwell listed on the depth chart when playing Ohio State.